Hello and welcome to Education Today. I'm your host, Kelvin Vaughn, and today we have the pleasure of having Rodney Walker, President and CEO of Grant Central USA, the Grant Writers Association, with us. Rodney is a leading expert in grant development systems. His company conducts the ultimate grant that gets funded workshop and nationwide that empowers nonprofits, government agencies, and individuals on the best ways to secure grant money for their causes. They also host the First Responders Grants Conference and the Education Grants Conference. A few of his clients have included United Way, Habitat for Humanity, the Magic Johnson Foundation, the Bush Foundation, Hawaii State Teachers Association, and numerous school districts and city governments. Rodney is also the publisher of the Education Grants Report and the creator of the Grant Money Magnet. On today's show, he'll be revealing a cheat sheet for superintendents to help them win more money for their school districts. Welcome, Rodney.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So glad to be here.
Well, you're going to teach superintendents how to cheat? Is that what I'm hearing here?
Yes, today I'm actually going to teach these superintendents some ways that they can cheat to get more monies to their school districts. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but we're actually going to help them to learn some ways that's going to help them to get more money.
Okay, well, great. Well, why don't you start by telling us how you got started in grants?
Well, I got started in grants back in early 2002. I was working for a nonprofit organization at the time, and I was one of the education directors for this organization, and we had about 3 other directors. We actually had a contracted grant writer that worked with the agency, and she would come around with a little notepad, ask us questions about our different programs, and she would take that information, compile it, and put it into a grant proposal, and she would submit it to a funder. And in about 2 months or so, we found out that we were actually getting funded. And I was like, wow, you take my words, her words, and his words, and you write down something on paper, and somebody turns around and they give you green paper, they give you money. So I was really blown away with that. And I never will forget asking her, hey, will you show me how to do this? And I felt like I was asking her for a last piece of cheese, because she was like, Rodney, if you don't get back away from me, I'm not going to show you this grant writing thing. And long story short, she didn't show me. So I just decided that I was going to just dive into the process. And in diving into the process, I felt flat on my face. I applied for a $25,000 grant to the Hogg Foundation in Texas, appropriately named for Texas, right? The Hogg Foundation. So I submitted that grant. It did not get funded. But the good news was that there was a senior program officer there. She said to me if I would like to come by to meet with her to discuss the problem areas with my proposal, she'd be happy to meet with me. So I took her up on that, and that was one of the smartest things I ever did. Went and met with her. We discussed the problem areas with my proposal, and let's just put it this way, there were a lot of problems. But I ended up never getting funding from that funder. But the information I got from her during that time was very pivotal and helped me to be where I'm at today. I eventually decided that I was going to go to grad school to learn how to do it the right way. So I did an MBA that had a focus in nonprofit management, and decided that I was going to focus on the fundraising aspect in grant writing. And in doing so, I learned the ins and outs of grants. I took some classes in my graduate program. I eventually did a certificate program at Duke University and started focusing really in grant writing there as well. And then I did an advanced certificate in grant writing from Cal Poly University, and basically just became a sponge to get my hands on as much information as I possibly could for grants. In the process of doing so, became really good and started getting funded. And then I started having some recommendations come from some of my professors. In fact, one of them said, hey, have you ever thought about doing this as a career? And at the time I hadn't. So I decided just to start sharing some of the information with some others. And before you know it, they started getting funded as well. And one thing led to the next, and here I am today.
Great. What a journey. What a journey. Well, let me ask you, why is it important that schools and school districts put their best foot forward when pursuing grants?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's important for a number of reasons. School districts have to have grants to survive. They right now are getting the vast majority of their monies from the government and from our tax dollars. And there are basically 2 types of grants that are available, 2 major kind of categories. These 2 categories for those education grants, one of those categories is formula grants. And the formula grants are the grants that the government is pretty much going to give to any school that's in a school district or any state. So those schools within a certain state will receive a certain amount of money based upon the formula that the government has come up to be able to issue out money. For instance, there are so many students that come to school every day. For each one of those students, there is a set dollar amount for those students. So it's kind of a formula. So those grants are non-competitive in nature. So every school is going to get it. They just have to basically fill out some basic paperwork. But there are also another category of grants called project grants. These are the grants that come from the Department of Education that are competitive grants. So school districts are competing against other school districts, and other schools are competing for the same pie of money. And if they don't bring their A game, let's just put it this way, they don't get funded, and they want to get funded.
Wow. Well, that seems really, really critical mindset and process they have to implement. What's the biggest challenge school and school districts face when pursuing grants?
Well, there are a number of challenges that they face. One of the biggest challenges that many of them face is that they don't really have the best systems in place to go after grants. And by systems, I mean many of these school districts will have a grant writer that may be hired. Some of them have contracted grant writers that come in and do some of the grant writing. But many of the school districts simply don't have the systems in place. So what happens, some of the smaller school districts may have their superintendent or maybe some of their other school administrators that are applying for the grants. And it's really kind of done kind of haphazardly. So here's a grant opportunity that comes up. Oh, okay, we got to hurry up, scramble, pull everything together, and now let's go after this grant. And it's not really an organized system and an organized approach. So the biggest challenge is often that they simply don't have the systems in place to be able to secure the most monies that they possibly can. In essence, many of them are dealing with antiquated, outdated, old-fashioned ways of going after grant funding. And if they can tighten that up and say, okay, great, we're going to get a system in place and decide to approach grant writing in a very organized manner and be able to not just do grant writing the old way, which was simply having one person do all the writing. If we develop a team approach, now we can be much more effective and secure a whole lot of more money. So that's one of the biggest challenges that they face, is that they simply don't have systems in place.
Well, that's interesting you say that about systems. I mean, any reason why they don't make these systems and put them in place? I mean,
That's another great question. Well, there are a number of reasons why. Let's just start from the top. The bottom line is that we have school superintendents, school principals, school administrators that are in charge of these schools and school districts. They have a lot on their plate. I mean, they're asked to do a gazillion things while faced with unsurmountable pressures and challenges that come up every day. So the superintendent and the school administrators or the principal of whatever school, they are in charge of setting the tempo and the pace for the whole school. Also, they're responsible for it even in raising monies and bringing monies to their districts. So with having so much on their plate, they oftentimes don't really have the proper attention given to this area. So what happens, it's almost like having a leak in a home. If you have a leak, maybe it starts off in a small leak, and before you know it, it becomes a bigger leak if you don't address the issue. So that's the challenge that many school districts are faced. The superintendents, the school administrators haven't really focused in on getting a plan. The other thing is this, Kelvin, many of them don't necessarily even know how, because they've been trained in school administration, managing, making sure that the classrooms are as effective as possible, budgeting and things of that nature. But very few of them have actually been trained on the best ways and the best strategies to go and secure funding. So if they haven't been trained and they don't know, what can they share with others? Very little. So that's another big challenge that many of these schools are faced with as well.
Okay. Well, what can school administrators and superintendents do to become more effective in their grant pursuit?
Well, it kind of comes back to what we just talked about in terms of the systems. A part of it is getting systems in place and really getting what I like to call a team involved in the process. Because if they can get a team in that can help them, then it lightens the weight and they're able to be much more effective because they're not doing it as a solo event. There's some other things they can do to become effective. They can become more methodical in their grant pursuit. So instead of simply waiting for a grant opportunity to come and then everybody become on pins and needles trying to go after this grant funding, they can become more strategic and start getting certain things in place before the grant opportunities even come up. And there's certain grants every year, like clockwork, that tend to come up every year. And so if they could get a head start, get the systems in place, make sure that everything is tight, figure out what initiatives they're going to be going after this year, they become more effective in their pursuits.
Great. What is the cheat sheet you have and to help our superintendents and school districts?
Well, the cheat sheet that I have for school superintendents and their schools to become more successful really has to do with helping them to stop robbing themselves. Yes, many of them right now are actually robbing themselves.
You stop robbing themselves?
Now, I know it sounds crazy, but many of these schools are actually robbing themselves right now. And if we can help them to stop robbing themselves, then they'll be more effective. So let me share with you about 12 things and 12 ways that they are currently robbing themselves. And the answer, the cheat sheet that I actually have for them, is kind of housed within these 12 questions. These are the problems that they're faced with right now. This is how they are currently robbing themselves. First, many of them are simply going about grant writing in a kind of haphazard way. So the first thing is that they're not seeking as many grants as they possibly can be going after. So in essence, they are seeking grants from limiting sources. So if they only are pulling from like one pool, they are limiting themselves. Secondly, they have the opportunity to go after funding that they probably are not aware of. And because they're simply unaware of it, then they're shooting themselves in the foot. They got to become aware of all the opportunities and go after the right ones. Secondly, many of them don't apply as much as they possibly can. So they're not applying enough. They're going to limited sources. Third, many of them are unaware of the full range of the grant opportunities that exist. So no assessments have been done to see, hey, what other grants can we qualify for? Fourthly, they are rarely developing relational equity in their grant process. And by relational equity, Kelvin, I actually mean the following. Many people think that grant writing is just writing, but grant writing is so much more than writing. There is a relational aspect that they've got to create and they've got to grow equity in to help also ensure that they get funded. Fifthly, many of them have little or no systems in place. So if they can get systems in place, that's another way that they can stop robbing themselves. And number six, most of them have poorly construed grant development plans, if any at all. Most of them don't even have plans in place for grants. So if they can do that, that will help them as well. Another cheat sheet that can help them to stop robbing themselves and to get more funding. Many of them don't have any roles, well-defined roles of leadership within their grant writing. So if they can get that, that will help them as well. And number 8, many of them have a lack of grant development best practices, which basically means they just don't know the best way to go after grants. They are going after them, but they're not going after them the best way. Many of them are wasting a lot of time, and we both know that time is money. Ninth, many of them have a limited number of schools pursuing grants within their district. Now, this is a big one right here, Kelvin. Many of them, some of these school districts have like 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 200 some odd schools or more in their district, but the grant pursuit is only being done at the district level. That's a big, big problem. So that's another way they can begin to become more effective if they begin to develop a decentralized process that allows the other schools within the district to go after funding. Here are a couple other ways. Another way is that many of them don't have any concrete goals and objectives written down for their grant pursuits. To become effective, they have to have goals. If you have no goals, you will reach nothing, exactly what you have. So they got to get some concrete goals. What is the dollar amount that we're trying to go after this year? And to aggressively begin to pursue those. And number 11, many of them have poorly ran grant writing team meetings. if any at all. Most of them, Kelvin, don't even have team meetings going on. So again, if we don't meet, we don't have goals, we don't reach our goals because we're not talking and communicating about it. And lastly, the last way that they're robbing themselves, many of them have a lack of empowerment throughout the entire district to pursue grants. That's something that has to change. And if they change these things, they become more effective in their overall grant writing efforts.
Nice, very nice. Let me ask you, Rodney, are smaller school districts able to compete with larger school districts?
You know, this is a big question. This is a big challenge for a lot of school districts, especially the smaller ones and some of our mid-sized ones. They think that they actually can't compete with the larger ones because of just sheer size. But I'm reminded of a story of a group of teachers that were empowered to pursue grants in Kelowna, Iowa. Now, this city had a population of just it's under 3,000. It was like 2,293 people in the entire city.
Less than 3,000 people?
In the entire city.
Wow.
Now, mind you, they were really small, but this one small school empowered their teachers to pursue grants. And what happened afterwards was quite amazing. They actually pulled together these just a small handful of teachers began to pursue grants. The school district empowered them to go after the grants. And as they were empowered, in about a year or so, they were able to secure over $1 million of grant funding. Now think about it. This one school with a few teachers that had a game plan, that had a goal, went after grant funding, and they got funded. Many smaller school districts can compete, but again, it gets back to the systems. They have to have a game plan. If they get a game plan and if they're empowered from their superintendent with their principals, then more funding can come their way.
That's amazing and promising as well. Are there any tools or resources out there to help schools to evaluate what they're doing wrong with their grant development?
Yes, there are a lot of tools. In fact, I encourage every single school district to make sure every year that they get training. Training is imperative because it can be the difference between them getting a few dollars and millions of dollars. We've been able to help a lot of people every year to come in, and we've worked with some people that have come in from ground zero. I mean, people who knew doodly squat about grant writing came to the training and sent a few people from their district to come, and they turn around and they got funded. And so schools can, first of all, some tools is just getting training. And there are many places that are offering training. I believe that we happen to have one of the best programs out there in this area. But getting training nationwide is one way. Other tools that can help, we have some assessments that I like to call our listeners' attention to as well. We have the Education's Grant Assessment. And the Education Grants Assessment can be located at educationsgrantsassessment.com. It's a great tool to see the areas that are problematic currently with the district. So a district can go there, take the assessment, see what their strengths are, as well as look at their weaknesses. And when in doing so, if they complete it, we also provide a free consultation just to explain everything line by line. So that's another tool that many may find helpful as well. We also have some other resources I can call your attention to at educationgrantsvideos.com. If you go there, we have a few other videos that give some very helpful tips that can help a district begin to win more money.
Great. Sounds like a great resource. Can you tell me about, tell me about your Education Grants Conference that you have?
Great. The Education Grants Conference is a conference that we offer to help educators focus on the areas of grants and to get more grants. It's where we bring a pool of people together nationwide that come and they get a chance to hear some of the best practices in the industry. They also get a chance to network with others, to see what others are currently doing that's working and what's not working. And we also share a lot of insight from the funders at this workshop. Information that we've gathered through interviews, through special reports, and it's just a great time for those that are in the industry that are seeking funds to learn more proven strategies that help them to become more competitive to get more monies for their district. So that takes place. We have this next one coming up real soon. That's going to be taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada. And any of those that are interested in that can go and visit educationgrantsconference.com.
Let me ask you now, conferences can be great and people can get great value, but what happens after the conference, after I attend this conference? Am I just kind of stuck after that?
That's a great question. Oftentimes that happens. People come to a conference, they get all pumped up, and then they go back and they don't have those systems in place to keep them going. So one of the things that we do, we have the Education's Grants Conference, but after that conference, those that attend the conference are also plugged into our Grant Writers Association. So there's a plethora of resources that we have waiting for them. Templates, samples of proposals that have actually won, as well as a lot of other educational videos to continue to guide them and keep them on the right path with their grant writing efforts.
Great. It sounds like you have a fantastic program, Rodney. How can our listeners reach you if they want more information from you?
Well, they can reach me by visiting a few of the websites. In fact, I would call their attention to the couple of sites that I gave a little earlier. The best way is to go and take a look at the assessment at educationsgrantassessment.com. That's educationgrantassessment.com is one way you can reach me. You can also reach me by calling 1-888-293-0284. And if they're interested in some of our trainings, we offer a really powerful training, especially for those in the education arena and school districts. It's actually our grant money magnet. It's a powerful coaching program that a few each year take advantage of, and they are able to take advantage of learning some insight that many others are not using. In fact, I would venture to say less than 1% of our listeners out there with their school districts are probably using the entire system that we offer, which is a very comprehensive system that helps schools to become more effective in their overall grant-seeking efforts. So if you're interested in that, feel free to give us a call, and we will look forward to getting a chance to help to empower your school to become more successful in its efforts.
Okay, Rodney. Well, thank you so much. It's been valuable information provided to us. And listeners, go there to his site and get that assessment. I think it'll be something of great value to you and your organization. Thank you so much, Rodney, for coming today.
My pleasure, Kelvin. Have a good one.